Hi, John from Instaclustr here, and today I'll be showing you how to connect your Jupyter Notebook environment with an Apache Cassandra cluster. We know Cassandra is a terrific NoSQL database that can store huge amounts of data for us to take advantage of, and Jupyter Notebook is a great environment where we can manipulate that data. So I'll be showing you how to connect to an Apache Cassandra cluster, how to pull some data off and turn it into a data frame, and then I'll be showing you how you can store data back into Cassandra to complete the cycle there. So let's get started. Before we get into it, we should lay out what our dependencies are, what we need to have running. So we obviously need a Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab environment running. This one you can see here is Jupyter Lab running on my local machine, but the demo should work equally well on any Jupyter Lab environment we have. The other thing we need running is an Apache Cassandra cluster. Now I'm going to be using the Apache Cassandra cluster running in the Instaclustr managed service. That'll help me get some details quickly and easily. But this demo again will work equally well with any version of Apache Cassandra. Just some settings on the connectivity side may change slightly, but it should more or less be the same. So let's get started. We'll create a new notebook. This one will be based on Python. And the very first thing we need to do is let's just install some dependencies that we'll need for the rest of the demo. We need the Cassandra-driver. We're using Pandas and Matplotlib. Now if we hit run, now in my environment, all of these requirements are already installed. They may be in yours as well, but if they're not, that should install them. So we have our dependencies installed. So what's the next step? The next step is we should start with some connectivity code to the Cassandra cluster because we're going to be pulling data off of it. And for that, we can actually use the Instaclustr console. Now, the console will be used for two things. The first thing is your Apache Cassandra cluster will need to allow access from whatever computer you'll be connecting with. In order to open connectivity between my Jupyter Lab environment and my Apache Cassandra cluster, I need to open up the firewall. Now, for the Instaclustr managed service, that's as simple as going onto this screen and entering the IP address of my Jupyter Lab environment. In this case, it'll be my local computer. And it will open up the firewall rule and allow access and connectivity for the rest of this demo. The next thing we're going to do is, still in the Instaclustr console, is go to the connectivity info page. And here we can find all of the contact points for our cluster. If we scroll down, we can see we have a Python demo. And we'll be using this Python demo to set up our connectivity to our cluster. We'll just copy this whole cloth. It's pre-populated with the contact points for my cluster. It's also pre-populated with the default username and password, which we could change, but we won't at this stage. So let's copy all this and we'll go back to our Jupyter Notebook, paste it in here. Now the one thing we will change, because we're going to be using this session in subsequent sections, we're going to just remove this statement here that shuts down the cluster object because we want to keep using it. So what this is going to do is going to connect to our cluster and then just print out some metadata. It's a very simple demo, but it will quickly get you connectivity. And if we run it now, you can ignore that deprecation warning for a minute. And you can see here it's connected to cluster and it's printed out the data centers, the racks, and the hosts. Great, so we have connectivity now to our Instaclustr Apache Cassandra. But let's actually turn this into something a little bit more useful. Now this cluster has been pre-populated with some weather data. I'll click over to the CSV and get a quick overview of what we have here. You can see here it's split into years, months, and days. There's a variety of data that's contained in the table. So what we're going to do is we're going to query Apache Cassandra and turn that into a Pandas data frame. So the first thing we need to do is import Pandas. And what we're going to do is we're going to define a new factory. By default, the Cassandra-driver will return data as a Python tuple. But we can actually override that behavior and turn it into any data type that we want. In this case, we'll be turning the entire data set into a data frame. We do that by defining a Pandas factory and then setting the session to use this as the row factory. Just going to scroll down a bit. And now all we need to do is we need to execute a query. So we can do that. We can define the query as so. So you can see here we have a query written in SQL, which is very similar to SQL. And we're saying select star, which is all the columns, from weather.data, which is the database, where the year is 2015 and the month is 1, which would make it January. Now, what we can do is we can take the data frame from that result, and this will give us a data frame object, and then we can display it. And you can see here, if I scroll down, it's printed off sort of the head and the tail of this Pandas data frame, which contains all of the information from, you can see here in the day column, from the 1st to the 31st of January in 2015. And all of the columns are displayed there. And because this is a Pandas data frame, what you do from here is essentially up to you. But we can do something like this and take an average of the daily temps. You can see here, using the Pandas data frame, we've used the group by function, and we've grouped it by day, and we are taking the temperature degrees for that day and calculating the average or the mean. And in this average temps object now, we have our average temps for that day. So again, pretty convenient. What else might we do with a Pandas data frame? Well, we can also do some graphing. So you can see here we've used Matplotlib library, and we've plotted the max wind velocity for this data set. We can actually add another plot point if we want to. We can also plot the temperature plot point at the same time. So there we can have another way that we could use the Pandas data frame to visualize the data that we have on file. The final thing we want to do is actually insert some data back into a new table. So let's do that in a new section here. What we'll do is we'll create a table first, and I'll step you through what we're doing. So you can see here in this command, what we're doing is we're going to create a table called weather.averageTemps. We'll give it the columns year, month, day. Value that we'll be interested in is the average temp, which is a double. Then we'll give it a primary key, and we'll execute the query. You see it doesn't actually return anything, and that's fine. Now what we want to do finally is actually insert data into this table that we've created. We can do that in a couple ways, but what I'm going to show you is how we can make a prepared statement. You can see here we've created an insert statement object using the session.prepare. This tells Cassandra that we're going to have a statement that we're going to call. We want it to execute this command here, insert into weather average temps, giving the column names and the values. And what these question marks at the end will allow us to substitute in values from another object that we have to use. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. So let's use this insert statement now. What we'll be doing is we'll scroll up and we'll use this average temps object that we took the, just as a reminder, we took the average temperature for each day in this data set. So we can actually loop through this, take the items object, and now what we can do is we can use the prepared statement. We can execute it. And what that's going to do is if we run that, it will loop through each of the items in our average temperatures, which is the day and then average temperature that day. And it will execute the insert statement, prepared statement, and input the parameters I and T, which is the day and the temperature. And finally, if we want to just check that the data is correct, we can execute another statement to verify the data. Display. And you can see here, there it is. We have executed a new select statement. We've grabbed the average temperatures table. And you can see here we've then displayed the rows, the result. You can see here each day, each value. And that's where we'll end the demo today. There we have it. We've taken our Jupyter Notebook, we've connected it to our Apache Cassandra cluster, and we've got some data off of it, we've transformed it, shown some graphs, and we've put it back into our Cassandra cluster. And that's just scratching the surface of what's possible when you connect your Jupyter Notebook with open source technology, just like Apache Cassandra. And if you have any other requests or anything else you'd like us to demonstrate for you, feel free to leave a comment below or send us a message, and I'm sure we'll be able to see what we can do about getting a demo to you. But other than that, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining me. See you later.